What if I told you there is a way for you to be able to draw anything, literally anything, to perfection, which I know sounds crazy, but by the end of this video, you'll realize I'm kinda not even exaggerating, bro. A couple months ago, I came across a concept, a pretty niche concept, which was so fascinating that simply knowing it existed, that simply understanding it, made me feel like I became like 10 times the artist. And unlike a lot of art improvement videos out there, we're gonna focus on the more psychological aspect of things and how to literally rewire your brain in order to improve your art. And I can guarantee you that by the end of this video, your brain will never be the same. So there's this psychological concept, which once we understand is gonna completely change the way we view, improving an art in general. And it all starts from when you're a kid. So, a few years ago, you're a kid, you're like running around being stupid, like eating mud and stuff like that. And as you're growing up, as the years go by, your brain is observing what's around it, right? And in the process, it begins to attach certain symbols to certain things, right? When you were a kid, you probably had a certain way of drawing things. For example, you probably had a certain way of drawing birds, a certain way of drawing people, that kind of stuff, right? See, these were the symbols that our brain had attached to these things. So like the stick figures we all drew as kids, right? That was the symbol that our brain had attached to what the human body is supposed to look like. And as you grow and you keep on drawing, the symbols your brain has for everything that you draw, all these symbols, they begin to evolve, they begin to become more complex, maybe even have multiple symbols for a singular thing. You know what I mean? Anyway, this whole symbol attaching process thing that our brain does, I want you to keep this in mind for later in the video, because it begins to explain why we struggle with drawing sometimes. But right now I want to go into probably the most crucial concept of this entire video that's going to set us on our path to being able to draw literally anything. So there's two parts to your brain, right? The left side and the right side. And you've probably seen all those online personality quizzes of whether you're a right brain or a left brain personality. But bro, those are all horrendous. Those are bogus, bro. Please don't believe them. However, what is an actual scientific fact is that there are two sides to your brain, and each side of your brain has different tasks that it performs, and the two sides kind of work together as well in order to perform different things, right? The left side of your brain is like more dominant, and it's typically the more like analytical, logical, and it does stuff like math, reading, writing, recognizing language, speech, that kind of stuff, right? Whereas the right side of your brain, it's less dominant, but it's more kind of intuitive, creative, you could even say emotional, you could even say artistic, right? That kind of thing. And you see, your left side of your brain controls the right side of your body, so it's kind of like crissy-crossy in a sense, you know what I mean?
One thing that we find in the dominant hemisphere, which is typically the left hemisphere, is language. That along with language, things like logic and math skills are also both mainly controlled by the dominant hemisphere. The non-dominant hemisphere, typically the right hemisphere, has a less prominent role in language, but it is responsible for many other tasks. For example, the non-dominant hemisphere plays an important role in understanding the emotional tone of language. And it allows us to recognize whether the people that we're speaking to are happy or depressed or anxious, just by the way that they sound.
You see how they're doing different things, but they're also working together and painting like an overall picture, you know what I mean? See, that's typically how it works. But then there's this guy, and this guy is different, and understanding his story just perfectly illustrates the difference between the left and the right brain. So this guy, he had his brain split in half by a surgeon, like right down the middle, just choop, split his brain in half. It's like an operation they do in order to control people who have really bad epileptic seizures, and it's an operation, it's supposed to work, something like that, right? So since his brain is literally split in half, his left and his right brain can't communicate to each other like ours can. So his brain works in his two brains in a sense work in a very interesting way. So he gets together with these scientists and all, and they do a couple experiments, I guess you could say. So they flash a word on the screen to different sides of his brain. Because like we said, left brain controls the right eye. So if you flash it to the right eye, it goes to the left brain. Flash the word to the left eye, it goes to the right brain. It's crissy-crossy, you know what I mean? So they flash the word phone to his left brain. And then they ask him what he saw. What word did you see? And he says, I saw the word phone. Which makes sense, right? Because they flash it to his left brain, and that's what the left brain does, right? The left brain reads, it recognizes language, right? So that makes sense. But then they flashed the word to his right brain.
But when a word is flashed to his right brain...
Dude, see that?
Okay. So I'm going to ask you...
But now watch what happens.
To draw that with your left hand.
lost.
Why don't you try drawing another picture of it over here if that'll help you.
Oh, phone.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
It's almost as though somebody has given him a secret communication.
Bro, how crazy is that? This guy, they flashed the word to his right brain. He didn't even realize there was a word. But then if they ask him to draw it, he is going to draw it. And it's only after he's drawn it that he realizes what word was there. He's like, oh, this looks like a phone. So is the word phone? And the word was phone. Bro, that's just so crazy. Oh my God. So this story it perfectly encapsulates like the difference in function between the left and the right brain. You know what I mean? But this is not a brain psychology class, right? This is an art video and we're trying to learn how to draw literally anything, right? And I promised you that by the end of this video your brain will literally have changed, right? So why does understanding the difference between the brain hemispheres, why is it important? Why does it matter? Why do we need to understand this, right? Just think about it. Once we understand the root of a problem, in this case our drawing, right? So once we understand the root of the problem, it's only after that we can actually begin to find proper solutions, right? And then that makes sense, right? So in order for us to understand why we're struggling at art, there's something very important that we need to understand about the two sides to our brain.
The fundamental difference between the left and right is relatively explored and mastered versus relatively unexplored and not mastered. You need a system that tells you what to do when you don't know what to do.
The left brain operates in known territory and the right brain operates in unknown territory. Okay, so when you're drawing something from reference, you're practicing something you've not drawn before, right? You're practicing something you've not mastered quite yet. So you're venturing into unknown territory, right? So you would imagine, like you'd think that this would be a task best suited for the right brain, right? However, this is where a sort of kind of mix-up occurs in a sense, and this mix-up is exactly where the problem lies. And I'll give you the perfect example, right? Like, why do you think every artist, like, at some point struggles with foreshortening, like, really hard? Like, why? Like, why do you think this is the case? Why do you think we all suck at foreshortening for a period of time? Right? Just think about it. When you're trying to learn how to draw foreshortening, you already are accustomed to drawing arms in a certain way. Maybe you're accustomed to drawing arms just straight down, right? So when you're going to try and practice the foreshortened arm, you go there and you're thinking to yourself, okay, this part of the arm, the bicep, right, it usually comes down like this, and okay, let's make it shorter because it's foreshortening, right? So then the forearm usually comes down a bit like this, and oh my goodness me, that doesn't look like a foreshortened arm. Oh my God. You know what I mean? We want to be adhering more to the reference as opposed to adhering to the preconceived kind of symbols that we already have for what this thing is supposed to look like.
What we end up doing is we see something and we say, yeah, I've seen those things before. I know what they are. And then we go to draw it. And what we're really drawing is what we think we've seen, not what we actually have seen. And often the difference between what we've drawn and our reference is not our lack of drawing skills. It's because I've never been trying to draw what was in the reference. I was always trying to draw something in my head, and I didn't realize that what was in my head was actually a bit different from what was in the drawing.
You know what I mean? So we kind of just want to find a way to ignore our left brain, because when we're drawing, we're venturing into unknown territory, aren't we? And we've already established that that's the domain of the right brain. But why does this even happen? Like, why does our left brain interfere with the task that will be best suited for the right? Like, bro, our brain is supposed to be on our side, right? So like, why is it doing this? And is this something that we can even fix? Well, before we get into all of that, do you understand the problem here, right? See, the reason a lot of the times we use reference and it turns out bad is because our brain already has this preconceived symbols, right? This preconceived idea of what this thing is supposed to look like. And then when you're trying to draw the reference, you're caught between trying to draw the reference and trying to draw, and subconsciously trying to draw the preconceived symbol of what this thing is supposed to look like. And the drawing just ends up turning out So this is something that we want to get rid of essentially, right? We want to use our right side of our brain when we're learning how to draw. But since our left brain is just more dominant, and we spend all these years in school like basically cultivating our left brain with like all these tests and all these like quizzes, and like everything we've done like up until this point throughout our childhood has just been left brain stuff, right? So we kind of want to learn to bring out our right brain more deliberately, which is like, okay, cool, but how do you even go about rewiring your brain in this way?
As you use a brain region, it becomes more and more excitable and easy to use again. With learning, we see that whole networks of brain activity are shifting and changing.
The more we use a brain region, the easier it is to use again. So in order to bring out our right side of our brain, we're gonna have to do a task that our left brain is just completely and utterly incapable of interfering with, right? A task where the left brain has zero business interfering with, something that is truly, well and truly and undeniably unknown territory. I mean, okay, yeah, that sounds good and all, but what are the actual actionable steps? Well, before we get into all that, I just say simply like knowing this even exists, simply understanding that this is even a thing is kind of like step 0. So like, congratulations, bro, we're already like partway there, you know what I mean? And now for the steps required in order to recalibrate your brain. Well, it's pretty straightforward. Honestly, you don't need to do any sort of weird meditation, summoning the gods, breathing technique or whatever, right? Because like we've already established, the more we use a brain region, the easier it is to use again. Simply enough, we just need to use our right brain more often, which is cool, but like how exactly do we do this? Well, there's 2 exercises in particular that I'm gonna tell you about that will aid in rewiring your brain. And on top of the 2 that I'm gonna tell you, there's more that you can do that will have the same effect. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna grab a reference image, right? And then you're going to flip it upside down, and that's what you're going to draw. You're going to draw the reference upside down, which is an exercise you've probably heard a few people talk about. And I know it sounds a bit strange, but I want you to think about it in terms of what we've just talked about today, right? Since everything is upside down, like it is going to be like just well and truly unknown territory. You're not going to know what the hell it is you're looking at. And because of this, your left brain is kind of going to take a back seat and allow your right brain to dominate the session. And you'll find that because of this, instead of thinking to yourself, oh, this is a shoe, this is an arm, this is a mouth, you'll find that you're more focused on things like, oh, okay, this line is straight, and then it like curves, and it meets this line at an angle, and then this shape is a little bit bigger than this shape, and then it wraps around and it looks something like. You'll find that you're more focused on things like the lines and the angles of the lines and the relationships of the lines and the relationships of the shapes. You'll find that you're more focused on that stuff instead of, oh, this is a mouth, let me draw a mouth, this is a hand, let me draw a hand. And it's just gonna be pure right brain stuff. And I just try it out once and you'll see just how different your brain works when you're drawing upside down as opposed to drawing like regularly, right? If you want to make things like a little bit more interesting, what you can do is like you can grab your reference and you can draw it right side up and then draw it upside down, and then just compare them and just see what's up. And if you struggle with something like foreshortening or perspective, and you take a reference that has foreshortening or perspective, I can guarantee you that your upside down drawing is going to be better than your right side up drawing, like 100% guarantee. Upside down drawing is like a 10 out of 10 exercise. I highly recommend it to you, but that's not the only thing you can do, right? You can couple this with pure contour drawing. Right, so pure contour drawing involves taking a reference that's very like highly detailed, so something like a crumpled up piece of paper, or like a wrinkled hand, or like a really high definition picture of an eye. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this reference and you're gonna look at it, and then you're going to draw it, obviously. But the thing is, you're not going to look at your canvas as you draw. You were solely going to look at the reference. The goal here is not to learn how to draw without looking at the paper, right? Because when you look at the image that you've drawn, it's going to be a gibbery mess, obviously, right? But the point is that you're 100% focused on what you're seeing as opposed to what you're drawing, right? So your pen strokes are supposed to like follow your eye movements, and your left, just think about it, your left brain has absolutely zero room to come in and begin attaching symbols to things, you know what I mean? Because you're just going to be making pure depictions of the deepest details that you see within your reference. And just try it. I can talk about it all I want, but the best thing for you to do is just try it out, right? Like get yourself set up, set like a 5-minute timer, and just try this thing out. I guarantee it's a pretty sick exercise, you know what I mean? All these, by the way, they come from this book, right? This book, which is basically the inspiration for this video. So if you're interested in more like exercises like this, and you're interested in this whole left brain, right brain concept, you can like look at this book, take a look at it. I recommend it. Pretty sick book. Although you can probably find the exercises online for free, if that's even is that even legal to say? I hope so. Anyway, at the start of this video, I promised you two things. I promised you that you will be able to draw literally anything. Your brain will genuinely have changed, right? So how does what we've learned today lead you to be able to draw literally anything? Well, you see, once you like kind of unlock your right brain, right? And then you couple this with actual practice, like working on the technical side of things, right? This is not supposed to be a shortcut thing, obviously. I'd be lying if I said, oh, this one secret hack. But this is something that you need, like this knowledge is supposed to be something that you couple with actual like practice, consistent practice, effective practice. And over the course of time, you reach a point where no matter what reference I put in front of you, you're going to be able to draw it accurately, right? Because you've taken care of the technical side of things, but you've also taken care of like the psychological side of things. So you're going to be able to improve in art, and I want to say rapidly or something like that. And I'm honestly like not at that point quite yet, but I'm going to get there eventually. So let's get there together, bro. You know what I mean? I also promised you that by the end of this video, your brain will never be the same, didn't I?
And perhaps the most exciting, the most interesting and transformative of these discoveries is that every time you learn a new fact or skill, you change your brain. And the ensuing research has shown us that all of our behaviors change our brain.
So if you're seeing this, congratulations. Your brain is different to what it was 15 minutes ago, or however long this video is.